Hello and welcome to my brand new YouTube channel. I'm not particularly comfortable with myself on camera or the sound of my voice, but we're just going to run with it. I was on a podcast literally last night with Will Exotic, so if you wanted to check that out, it's on Will Exotic's channel, and it just gave me a bit of a kick up the bum just to sort of get me into just putting my face on the camera and putting myself out there. So this is my YouTube channel, Paul's Monitors. You can follow me on Instagram at Paul's Monitors, and I'm going to use the channel just as a platform and a hub for basically monitor lizards. I want to put a podcast out there, the Captive Raptors podcast. I'm hoping to do a deep dive into every species that I keep personally, which is Ackies, green trees, mangrove monitors, boss monitor, Tristis monitor, the black-headed monitor, and Timor monitors, as well as a few other monitors that I've had experience with, so Dorianus, bluetail monitors, the Pilbarensis, Pilbara rock monitor, and the Kimberley rock monitor, as well as get other people on and talk about their experiences and talk about their monitors and their lizards for that matter. But I just want to sort of promote monitor lizard keeping and the husbandry of monitor lizards, because the guys at the Monitor Keeping podcast, Alan Stevens and Kai Fan, are doing a great job at pioneering this sort of industry of the monitor keeping podcasts. And again, Will Exotic, he's got the Monitor Madness on YouTube, so I just sort of want to follow suit for those guys and let's get my voice and my opinions on the reptile industry and monitor lizards. So yeah, this video is basically just going to be an introduction to me. I'm Paul, I'm 27 and a half, and I've been obsessed with reptiles my entire life. I live in Surrey, UK, and I've been focusing mainly on varanids for the last 2 years. So I wasn't really allowed any reptiles as a kid. I had a couple of pets as a kid, and that was pretty much it. And then I moved out when I was 17. I didn't particularly enjoy being at home that much, and I had this itch that I needed to get reptiles. And I moved out and I fell victim to the hobby of collection. I wanted this and I wanted that and I wanted this and I wanted that. So I had around 100 animals, including invertebrates, from stick insects to tarantulas to a big 4-foot bosque monitor, a 14-foot Burmese python, some corn snakes, some boids, geckos, just basically whatever I like the look of. I was like, yeah, buy it, I'll keep that. That's great, I'll do that. I'm thankful I didn't fall into the trap of smallest spaces I could find for it. I don't necessarily agree with this now, but this is the whole point of life. You grow and your opinions change. But I had my Burmese in an 8x4x3, and she was 14 foot, and at the time 6x2x2 or an 8x2x2 was sort of the standard, which, if we're all honest with each other, it probably still is now. I'm not really into keeping big snakes in captivity anymore, but this is about monitors. And my boss monitor was in a 10x5x5 or 4.5 or something like that, which was just custom built from reclaimed materials that I found on site. So I moved out at 17, keeping all these animals, and then 5 years later, I had my son, and I soon realised that looking after 100 pets, being a full-time electrician, a full-time husband at the time, and a full-time dad, it was too much for me. So sadly, a few of these beautiful animals just had to go. I had to rehome them. I didn't have space. And I was young and naive, and I didn't plan for what life may or may not have had in store for me. And on that, 10 months after my son was born, I got divorced. And after downsizing my collection from, say, 100 animals to 25, I had to downsize my collection to 0 because I couldn't bring them home with me to my parents. I wanted to be a herpetologist from very, very early, and my parents didn't really support that. They wanted me to get a real job and, make money and do this and do that, so I became an electrician. So I moved back home with them. I fell down a dark, slippery route of mental health and depression. Having to move back home, divorce, single dad, having to sell all my animals, all of this sort of got to me, and it was all a bit too much. So I knew that I couldn't be there for very, very long. So for 6 months to a year maybe, I lived back with my parents, and enough was enough. So I moved out, and I just knew that I had to get these animals back in my life. But I didn't want to fall down the same trap that I was in. I didn't want to go and buy an animal for the sake of buying an animal. I want these guys to be like a dog. Once you buy it, you're never going to get rid of it. You never like, you say to 99% of dog keepers how much to buy a dog. You can't buy that. But most reptile keepers, you say how much to buy this Aki, and if you said £1,000, I'd go, yeah, great, £1,000 for an Aki, that's an amazing deal. But no, this Sven's my baby. I'm not selling Sven. That's where I want to be. And if I get those thoughts on any of my collection, any of my family, if anyone says to me, oh, I'll give you X amount, and I'm contemplating it, I know that species probably isn't for me. So I moved back out, and I thought to myself, like, what do I want to keep? Like, what species is it for me? What species do I go down? Do I go down geckos? Do I go down this? Do I don't go down that? So I kept a lot of bugs just because they were low maintenance, and I just needed to sort of scratch that itch. And I had a reality check, and I'm doing the same thing just with bugs. This isn't right. You need to, if you're going to be in this hobby, you need to find your niche, and you need to find what you're passionate about. I love all reptiles, but there's a difference between loving all reptiles and keeping all reptiles. There's a massive difference. And I've always loved monitor lizards, and monitor lizards have always come into my head, but for some reason I just never kept them. And I think it's because the hobby makes it out like they're really, really hard to keep. And don't get me wrong, I believe that they are, and I don't want to put it out there that they're beginner animals. But that goes back to my point of having, say, an animal you're not passionate about, a beginner animal. If someone said to me, right, get a corn snake, 6 months to a year down the line, I'm going to be bored of that corn snake. And yes, that corn snake is more tolerable of my mistakes, but then that corn snake now hasn't got a home because I'm bored of it. Whereas if I waited an extra couple of years and did a bit more research and spent a bit more time with people that keep, for example, an Aki, I could have got an Aki, and I would have had the Aki, and I'd have been happy with it. Obviously, things happen, the divorce and stuff like that, but even then, you have a duty of care. You need to look after these animals and make sure that they go to good homes, even if life does, like, kick you up the arse. Excuse me. So I moved out, and I was like, what animals do I need to get? What this, what that? And I decided to go for monitors. So I slowly started building up my collection of monitors, and I got some Akis, and I've got a few other bits and pieces, and I think I started with the Aki, and then I got, believe it or not, my mangrove monitor, and then I got my green trees, and then I started to breed monitors for the very first time the end of last year. So it was the first time I've ever bred a species, and Akis were the very first species that I ever bred. But again, I'd been looking into them and researching them for, say, 10 years, and solely properly for a year or two. And yeah, so far I've been having some good success with these guys. I'll go into like a deep dive of it with my individual species that I want to hopefully do the podcast on. I don't know if I'm going to do audio and video or just have an audio podcast. Again, I'm never really ever on camera other than when my girlfriend decides to film me when I don't even know about it. So this is all very new for me, and I'm not particularly good with the editing, so the mess ups and the little burp earlier, that was they're all just going to stay in there. So I want this podcast to be honest. I want it to be open. I want it to be, if for example an animal dies, I want to share it and why it died. I don't want to hide my mistakes. I want people to learn from my mistakes. Hopefully you can avoid making the same mistakes. I want these animals to be like shone in a good light, but in a realistic light. I don't want to say get an Aki or get a mangrove monitor or get a tree monitor just because they're beautiful. I want to get them because you want to get them, and they will become part of your family for the rest of their lives. I want you to understand the pros and the cons of the species that are in question for yourself. So like I say, that's my plan. I want to get people on to talk about different species that I haven't kept. I want to get people on that I've had the species for 2 weeks. I want to get people on that have had the species for 20 years. I want people to have this place as a hub to sort of reflect on different species of monitors and the care of the different species of monitors that we have here in captivity. And yeah, if this is something that you're interested in, let me know. Leave a like, subscribe, please. If there's anyone would like to come on, I know it's still really, really early days, but if you'd like to come on and talk about lizards, just have a chat, then shoot me a message either on Instagram or comment on the video. But yeah, I think that wraps pretty much this one up, just as the introduction of the Captive Raptors podcast. I'm Paul. Like I say, this has been Sven. Let me know if you prefer the face and voice, or if you'd rather just audio rather than sort of having to look at my ugly mug. But yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. It really means a lot. Hopefully some good stuff coming out of this channel, reptile content wise. I'd like to think that I know a little bit and I might be able to help some people. I'm not an expert. I'm far from an expert. I never want to be an expert. I always want people to be teaching me and showing me better ways, and I always want to learn a better way for husbandry and captivity. I always want to better my care and make sure that these animals are having the best. I never want to stagnate, and I want you guys to sort of pull me up on my mistakes, and hopefully I can teach you guys a little bit more about the species that you keep. So I think my next episode will be about Ackies, as I have bred them. So Sven might make an appearance again. I might get Mac out. I can't get Bonnie out because she bites and I can't be asked to deal with that. But yeah, so my next episode will probably just be about Ackies. I'll deep dive into the care, the species, how I keep them, the temperatures, the humidity, the food, how I got them to breed, and then I'll probably touch a little bit on the babies, but I'm probably going to do a separate podcast about incubation, just because there's a bit to cover, and I'd probably want to talk to a few other people on different species, as I currently have only incubated Ackies, Timors, and I've got mangrove egg at the moment, but the Timors and the mangrove egg are very early days, so I don't have experience on incubation other than Ackies, but I can definitely touch on it and what I know and what I've learnt. So yeah, like I say, I'll wrap this one up. Sven says goodbye, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Cheers.